Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council for May 13th, 2015 to order. Will the council members please introduce themselves?
Dan Haggerty.
Lisa Ketching.
Laura Stein.
Dave Olson.
Chris Johnson.
And Erin Deinzer has told us she will not be able to make it this evening or our next meeting. So with that, we'll start with Nicholas and the Board of Supervisors report.
Great, thanks for having me tonight. A couple things on the list. First, I was asked to provide a report out regarding Seton, as well as a report out regarding the traffic and speed count tubes on 6th in Montero. So first, Seton, there's really been no action. The county can't take any action or make any recommendation until we know what Daughters of Charity is going to do. And so, given that the Daughters of Charity has not made a decision and is still evaluating what options for them are on the table, we can't make a decision. Chris and I had spoke about, is there a way to see what options may be on the table as far as the county taking action in the future. I don't know what that is, but I'm happy to bring that back to Supervisor Horsley, let him know that this was discussed and that people are interested in having that type of dialogue. So I'll bring that back to him and report back to you guys on what he says and what options may be available. The traffic and speed counts on 6th Street, that is a county project that we're doing and data that we're collecting. We have not finished, so therefore we're still compiling the data report. As soon as we have that, we'll be happy to provide that to the MCC. Last update is on Surfers Beach. Based on, as you guys might remember, based on the timeline that we had last given, today I should be in Santa Barbara, and I am obviously not. We had a slight issue with Coastal Commission agenda. It's being resolved right now. We'll be going to the Coastal Commission in June. We're working on a process for this project that will allow us to go to the Coastal Commission in June and the California Transportation Commission 2 weeks later, which is something that they typically don't allow, but they've been willing to work with us on this project to make sure that we're able to still get this going before the end of the upcoming construction season. So as of right now, provided that we are able to get our CDP from the Coastal Commission in June and we are able to hit the California Transportation Commission 2 weeks later, we will still be able to work within that construction window. If something happens either at the Coastal Commission or at the California Transportation Commission, then we have to start evaluating what other options are on the table. There was, not making the Coastal Commission meeting this month was extremely unfortunate. We had all of our information and there was, we'll say, an honest misunderstanding of what was going on, and so we're still optimistic that we're going to be able to hit our construction timelines though. So I'll continue to keep you guys up to speed on what's going on with that as we get closer.
Nicholas, are there any meetings for the Surfers Beach Committee scheduled or upcoming?
No, at this point, it's really just the internal paperwork of Caltrans and the Coastal Commission. So the Coastal Commission has our CDP application. They requested supplemental information. We got them the supplemental information. They have all the designs. Caltrans is just reviewing and finalizing the designs, and so at this point we're just kind of putting the final touches on everything. So as far as project meetings, really we're not going to get together until probably right before the Coastal Commission meeting, just to make sure we're all on the same page, and maybe do a brief run through as to what we want to present to the Coastal Commission themselves. And then after that, maybe we'll do one for the California Transportation Commission. I'll let you guys know though. And so The next Coastal Commission meeting will be in, I believe it's Newport Beach. So, but I'll keep everyone posted. We should have another MCC meeting, maybe 2, before we go down to Newport Beach. So at the next one, I'll let you guys know what's happened between now and then.
And have you given the quote-unquote final plans to the Coastal Commission?
We've given, this is gonna sound backwards, we've given the 100% plans, we have not given the final plans.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I understand the difference.
Yeah.
If we could get a copy of those, we'll put them on our website under the issues page.
Absolutely.
All right.
One last thing, also, I do remember that I promised that I'd get you guys the project description document when that gets finalized, so as soon as we get that finalized, I'll get that to you guys as well.
Great. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Any other questions for Nicholas? All right.
On the LED streetlights, so a reminder to people that you can comment on the LED streetlights on Speak Out, smcspeakout.com. And what's the deadline for comment there?
So I think we set the deadline for middle of June. What we've found is typically people will respond within the first 7 to 14 days.
Yeah.
And then after that, we don't even really get traffic on it. So we'll leave it, I think we set it to be open for 5 weeks, but, whatever we get in the first 2 weeks is really what we'll get. And Dave, I appreciate, I saw you had responded to some of the questions. I had posted a response the other day. I'm waiting for, someone asked about the finances as to how much it will cost. I'm waiting on those numbers right now, so as soon as I get those, I'll have those numbers up as well.
Yeah, I was tempted to comment on that, but I figured it was better if that came from Kenny.
I have a question, and regarding the LED lights, can you explain what the decision process is going to be? You're taking feedback, you're saying you're going to stop it at middle of June. Can you talk through your idea of the process before? I mean, at some point, there's going to be a decision made, and the Midcoast will be affected by that decision. So can you just elaborate a little bit on the decision process?
Absolutely. So at the end of that, the public comment period, we will look at what comments we've received, and we'll look at what comments we've received, what that information is telling us, and if the MCC would like to send a letter from the MCC's perspective, we always welcome that. And so, although I do believe that it's kind of split right now, so that will be rather interesting. But I know that as soon as we get those comments, we'll let the MCC know what the information that we received says, and then how we're going to proceed at that point in time. But we foresee it being this one round, and then and then we'll start the conversion process. We'll still have to order the lights, so it's not going to be the end of June. All the lights are going to be different. We also how long it took to order 4 lights. There's a lot more than 4 on the Midcoast, so we'll see how long it takes to order all of those and get those shipped in.
And for those in the audience who haven't seen them, the 2 in El Granada are right down here. So when you leave, you should go take a look at them and make comments. Even if you love them, you should make comments, so
Actually,
people know.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Especially if you love them.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, I'd looked at them last night, that the amber one is more amber, is more of an orange, I believe, than what we have existing here. So it kind of gives like a little bit false, it gives a wider range. So I was wondering, one, how did it come up with that particular color? And also, weren't we told that the downtown was going to have one type of a light, and the residential was going to have a different type of light?
Yeah, so what we typically do right now with the conventional streetlights are the lights that will be in kind of the town center, so Carlos Street, Main Street, right out here in front of the post office in El Granada, the light is going to be, it's going to burn hotter, so it's going to be brighter. When you get into the residential areas, it's not going to be as bright. right? And that's, you have your residential, you have your homes where people are sleeping. So you typically have two different outputs. So theoretically, we could continue to do that. I think that makes the most sense to do it that way. It depends on what we hear, what we hear from the community. I think one of the things we do want to avoid is someone saying, well, what's that light burning at, and say it's burning at, I think the brighter of the two LEDs is burning at, I was like 5,000 for some reason. I think it's 5,000. We don't want someone to say, well, I want to see what it looks like at 4,500. No, show it to me at 4,000. In 500 increments.
Well,
we're never
why
going to get anything
not?
done. We're never going to get anything done. Plus, you're never going to see a difference. I mean, you're not going to see a difference at 500
Okay,
increments.
so can I suggest that we table this? I think we've gone well past the report stage, and we'll put the LED streetlights back on the agenda on an upcoming meeting.
Okay,
But-
well, specifically the process.
Right, so I think Nicholas has sort of explained the process. It would be good if you could send a timeline. We'll put the timeline on the website.
Absolutely. Obviously caution that timeline.
And I know
Be a
it's
rough one.
not going to be exact, but people, people will want to know, is everything being replaced at once? Is it going to be incremental? All
Got it.
those kinds of questions. So the
Absolutely.
best we can do, we'll get it up there.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other government official want to say anything before we move on to public comment? All right. We'll move on to public comment. Any member of the public who wishes to can speak for up to 3 minutes. Please identify yourself and speak into the microphone. Bill, you're up first. Yeah, speaker slips, go ahead and send them up.
Thank you, Chairman. Board members, this is basically Nicholas. Since we had the co-side meeting over at Cypress Garden, I asked for a follow-up to the data that Supervisor Olsey said that he had about accident reports in California and such, and also for the backup data that went along with that report. I'd have to see if the public has access to that to verify that the conclusions were not the same as what we would expect when we look at the data, because we have been asking for that stuff for years and we never seem to get it. We said we'd follow up, so this is just my, me, public comment. Until I get it, I'll be there. Thank you.
Well, I may not send it just so I can see you every 2 weeks.
The bad part about that is that one of us needs to see the head.
I'll send that out, I promise.
All right. Carol, did you want to speak under public
Yeah,
comment?
just real quick. I just wanted to say I've been very impressed with the work you guys all have done, and Lisa has sent me a ton of stuff on a couple of issues that our neighbors have had concerns about, and especially related to the development in this area. One thing I have noticed in that, just talking with my neighbors and looking around, the information that you guys are sharing, nobody seems to know about it. So I was wondering if maybe we could come up with some solutions on getting a little bit more in the way of public understanding and public comment. I know that at the market down the street from me, the information on the development of Highway 1 is probably about 6 months to a year old that's been posted. And I have talked to a number of neighbors on some of the ideas that have been proposed. I don't know if it's from you or from other people about some of the solutions to the traffic on Highway 1. And I know that all of the solutions that they are aware of are none of the solutions that are being discussed currently right now. So what I was wondering is, does this commission, does the county, does the city have any plan to come up with a way of assisting our community members for having current information on some of the issues that are being provided, other than just the new updated version of, if they know where to go to on the website, they can go and find it there, but if they don't know that it's there, they'll never find it. So what I was hoping is that maybe we could look back. This is a grassroots neighborhood. We could look back and find some grassroots solutions to informing some of our neighbors on not just what's going on with the community, but some of the great proposals that you guys are proposing out to us to voice our opinions on.
Can I-
Thank you.
Yes?
When you speak to people and they express this, where do we get the information? Do you send them to our website?
I do.
Do they have trouble finding stuff on the website, or are they unaware of the resource?
They are completely unaware of the fact that you exist.
Well, I thank you very much for spreading the word.
But, there's only, the plan is to get out on the streets and get this information so that people are informed. But I feel like, I can hit the streets with some of the people that go door to door, give them information, refer them to your website, encourage them to participate in the meetings. But I feel like there should be some type of plan coming from you all, that maybe we can get volunteers to help implement it for you. We're a small community. I come from San Diego and Los Angeles. It's undoable there. It is doable here. And I don't know whether or not it's enlisting volunteers or coming up with a plan of identifying certain locations that 80% of our community go to, and those are the places you are going to post your information, not just referring them to your website, but putting the agenda items and putting what happens in the meetings so that they actually get inspired to participate in the local community events and voice their opinion rather than who would even know you guys exist unless somebody told us about you? So I was very lucky to find this, but I have probably talked to 30 people and not one single person knows who you are.
It's an eternal issue for
Yes.
us.
Yes.
Yes,
I
and
know
we-
you have
We
limited
talk
time.
to,
Well-
we talk to the
So-
reporter at the Review weekly, get articles in the paper. We have a Facebook page. We post our meetings and other issues on Nextdoor, at Patch.
They're at the
Any ideas you have?
Taqueria, they're pretty
And
much
I
everywhere we
that,
can think of.
Maybe even kind of getting down to, one of you mentioned the post office a minute ago.
We post there
The
too.
post office here, I don't see anything there. I've
It's
never
there every time we have a meeting.
Yes.
I looked this last week, I didn't see
Well, it's
anything
posted
there.
at least 3 days before the meeting. The post
And-
office takes it down
And
immediately.
again, I think this is an issue of you guys cannot be everywhere all the time, telling everybody about what you do, maybe figuring out. a way
We spend a lot of time
Yes.
doing that.
Yeah.
So, if you have ideas, we're very happy to hear them. You can contact any of us. We have an alias for the whole council.
But I do know that some of the stuff I see posted is outdated. Like
There's-
the stuff
Where?
at the little
Tell me
market
that
down
too, because I
here.
never posted anything there, so I have no idea who put that there.
It has to do with the pedestrian median, but then I come here and there's a hearing on creating, 4 lanes on Highway 1, which is, and roundabouts. I'm getting information that conflicts with each other at what I'm hearing here and what I'm seeing posted down at the market.
Yeah, so the-
I have a
Okay.
feeling that what you guys experience, it's very familiar to you, but just looking at something posted on a sign at the neighborhood market down here, it's completely different than what I've heard at the meetings.
Yeah, well, we do our best to get the word of mouth out as well as the paper,
Yeah, maybe it just needs
and
to be updated.
there's just, we've sort of run out of ways to try and reach people. All of us talk to people. We have groups we talk to. Again, if you or anybody else, including people watching the video, has ideas, and especially if you're willing to help, contact us and we'll gladly accept help. And this is probably a good time to point out that the council does in fact have a vacancy. So if you're really interested, and that reminds me, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the government report. We discovered today that there was a vacancy announcement for the MCC on the county website, but apparently it never got published anywhere but on the website. And I don't know if even you were aware of it, because it was about the same time I was asking you about that. So,
we'll reopen that. My guess is it's probably closed since then.
Yes.
So we'll reopen it. It was supposed to be posted in the newspaper, and it was not, as what it sounds like.
I did not see it in the paper, so.
It was a 15-day, it was posted the 1st and said it expired on the 15th, so I don't know what.
It's probably a
April.
45-day.
That was
Just my-
April 1st to April 15th.
That might have just been a glitch.
Your posting's a little bit more sexy.
Yes. Anyway, so there is a vacancy. It will run, the vacancy will run until December of 2016. So we will appoint somebody via the Board of Supervisors. All right, so does anybody else wish to make a public comment who doesn't in a speaker's slot? Go for it, yeah.
This is just a follow-up on what you just heard. So I really just had a meeting with a fellow who lives in Montero, and I said, I'm going to the MCC meeting tonight. He said, the what? So it's out there. A lot of people don't know. And this guy's lived here for a long time. So. But anyway, one thing I was going to mention is the post office, because there is a sidewall section of the post office, and we used to post things up there. And I talked to someone at the post office, and they do not do anything. In other words, anybody who posts things up there at any of the post offices, it's up to you. And they don't do anything. They, officially, the ones that you post inside the post office are only supposed to be official government ones. So the ordinary guy who's got something for sale can't post inside, but MCC can. Then all the other little postings, and nobody maintains those. So if somebody sold something they posted for sale, they have to go and take it down themselves. It's that sort of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that the post office doesn't do anything on that. Only the one that's inside.
We post inside.
Oh, I know that, but I was just making sure everybody else knows that.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Most people just pulled it a lot because we still have people up there that.
All right, and Chris wanted to make several public comments. So Chris, you're up.
Speaking of vacancies, the Coastside Design Review Committee has several vacancies, yes. One of our sitting architects has submitted his resignation. He's moving out of state. So that will put us back down to one architect. We do not have an alternate architect, so we have two positions open. Those are critical positions. And the reason I want to make a public comment on that is we had a situation a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year, where we were sitting with one architect and a community representative, and we were facing a project that kept coming up 1-1. And the community was getting members of the community were getting very upset at the one nay vote. And as I tried to explain at the time, there are checks and balances built into this committee, and one of them is that there are 3 people on the committee. Sure, a quorum is 2, but there should always be 3 people so that no one person is the focal point of the public's ire or adulation. So we're going to be back to that. That's not good. I mean, we can get 2 zip votes, and that does happen often, but we're looking at a 1-1 situation potentially going forward, and that is not good. So we need another architect. We need an alternate architect. We also need one of our longtime community representatives from Miramar is timed out. She's been on the CDRC for over 10 years, offered great service, but her period of service is over, and so we need another representative from Miramar, and also Princeton. Nicholas, I don't know if the county, if there was some discussion that Princeton community representatives may go away since there's only 5 or 6 legitimate residents in Princeton that live in houses, but currently we have a Princeton rep and an alternate, community alternate. We are going to be losing the Princeton rep in June, and Princeton is a hot place now and in the future, so it's very important that we fill those spots. I brought the announcement notice, and I'll just I'll leave it on this back desk here. If anybody wants to take a look at it. If you know any architects, if you know any people that live in Miramar or Princeton who would like to get involved, this is review of single-family residences that are being constructed or modified. Yes? Bill?
Does the architect have to live in Princeton or Miramar or anywhere on the coast?
No. No.
Anywhere in the county.
Anywhere in the county.
Anywhere in the county.
The architect, the community representatiors must live in their
Sure, no, I'm talking about the architect.
No, the architect can be from anywhere in the county.
Chris?
Okay.
Yes.
Could you point out that it can be a landscape architect, the architect position, it's either landscape architect or architect?
Yes,
Oh,
I believe it was 2 meetings ago, one of the main issues that we come up with, that we look at, that we often
set conditions on for a project is the landscape plan. And actually, the person from Miramar, Linda, who is timing out, is a landscape designer. We agreed that it might be good as if we could find a person to have one of the architect positions filled by a landscape architect. So that is certainly somebody that we would be very excited to have express interest in the CDRC. So if anybody knows a landscape architect.
There's kind of a problem with terminology here, because a landscape architect means something different from what you're saying that it means. Daniel Burnham, who designed Eldorado, was a landscape architect. It means he looks at the whole town and designs the whole town. Somebody who designs the landscaping for a building is not a landscape architect.
Well, you would say that, Leonard, except we had a long discussion in which the architects led the discussion, and they were very adamant that a landscape architect is an architect. That is the term to be used.
All research.
So I'm going by, I'm not an architect. I defer to their expertise on that. Like I said, they were adamant about that.
It says right here on the notice, architect or landscape architect,
Yes.
comes from the county.
Clarify the time commitment for your architect.
So it's hard to say what the time commitment is. It depends on the number of projects per meeting. We've had some meetings where there's 4, 5, 6 projects. The meeting itself could last, big wave exceptions aside. Big projects, a heavy docket could last 5, 6, 7 hours in a meeting, okay? But to prepare for that, the architect has to look at every project. And that means looking at the designs, looking at the permit application, all of that, then considering their notes, looking at the community guidelines, having, what their comments are going to be and what their points are going to be made. That could take 2-3 hours per project at home looking it over. So it's a considerable time commitment. We meet once a month. And like I said, those meetings can go anywhere from 3 hours to 6 or 7 hours.
You left out the salary.
Oh, yes. There's a generous stipend of $50 per meeting, so you can do the math on that. But of course, we're doing it for love of the community and not money, so
So would you guess 10 hours a month
I would say more than that for the architect.
for the third person, like if it was a contractor or something?
For the community representative?
Right.
It depends on the number of projects for that community. Usually there's not more than a couple per month, so I would say for the community representative, you're looking at 10 hours or less per month. Good questions, thank you. The next item I wanted to mention was on Tuesday, May 19th, at the Board of Supervisors meeting. The Board of Supervisors is going to deliberate on the newly crafted mini park policy that was passed, that was approved by the Parks and Rec Commission in April. And I spoke to County Parks Director Marlene Finley on Monday, and she said that the supervisor specifically asked that it not be on the consent agenda. And I initially said, oh, dear, that sounds troubling. And she said, no. The reason they don't want it on the consent agenda is they want a discussion in public record about this because they're very excited about it. They feel that it's a historical event and they want to have some public record discussion about it. So Marlene's very excited. I think we should all be pretty excited about this. This is a great development for San Mateo County, in my opinion. Just as I brought the letter from Marlene to the Marlene Finley to the Board of Supervisors. I'll put that back there as well. I also brought a copy of the proposed resolution in case anybody wants to look at that. Last comment is that also at that same meeting, just in case you happen to be there, the Board of Supervisors will hear an appeal of the Big Wave project that came before the Planning Commission. So they will be hearing and deliberating on that. So kind of an important meeting. Thank you very much.
What was the date again?
Tuesday, May 19th at 9 a.m.
Are there links on the MCC website?
Go ahead. Chris, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to add what Chris said about Big Wave. The staff report and the attachments are posted on the MCC website, midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. You'll find them on the homepage in the right column under focus topics. Or there's a big way page. Anyway, that's where they are. That's all.
All right, and as long as we're talking about government announcements, I will mention that on May 27th, at the Planning Commission, there will be a study session on the short-term rental ordinance that I and others have been working on. So I don't have any more details on that at this point, but it will be, according to Steve, on the May 27th Planning Commission agenda.
Is there a draft?
The draft that I last saw was before it went to county council, and I believe, and Nicholas, correct me if I'm wrong, the county council's office set that on hold pending all these other discussions.
Yeah, so, and two clarifications, yes, that's absolutely correct. So what will be going before the planning commission is going to be an outline of a policy. So what features are included in the policy won't be, my understanding is it won't be in its legal written form. Secondly, just so everyone understands, this would be a policy just for the coastal zone. So coastal zone of unincorporated San Mateo County.
Is it being modeled after another city like San Francisco?
Okay, so I'll talk to people afterwards, but briefly, yes, we modeled it after several other ordinances. Bill?
Yeah, I need to make a comment on this. Bill Keegan on page 3. So, I really have to insist that, we get some lead time on this, like a week. I mean, even if it's only an outline or draft or anything, so that we can read it over and attend and make, coherent comments. Lots of times, as you know, you have trouble with getting things less than 24 hours in advance, and that's really not fair to the public. It's not transparent, it's not open, it's not fair.
So in addition to going to the planning commission, we will also be bringing it out here to the Midcoast Community Council. So
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have drafts and
Under-
documents that you guys are using.
understood.
So
My understanding, Bill, is that there will not be a draft, that this was set up by Steve in response to interest by the planning commission, and it's mostly a Q&A type thing. It's not a materials type thing.
Again,
I've asked, but that's my understanding.
I've been talking to both of you for a
Yes.
few months now, at least, if not longer. I'm a member of Advocates for Open Government, and as much as it pains me to say this, because I think you guys do a fabulous job in getting information out to the community, with the exceptions noted earlier, that that's not your fault. I think it's more important now that we keep pushing both our local governments, the board of supervisors, and even all the way up to Sacramento if we have to, that this information needs to be out to the public, all the information, not just the bits and pieces that they dribble to us, so that we can see how the decisions are being made and see if they're really following the processes that they're supposed to. Case in point, I know at least 2 secret violations done by Hampton Bay, but unfortunately, the only way you can do something about it is you have to bring a lawsuit and pay out of your own private pocket. Something that needs to be changed at the state level, and we'll be working on things like that. But at this level, I think for you to have a public meeting and call it a public meeting and not give citizens at least a week or more to have the documents that you're going to be using so they can read them over and comment intelligently and bring up their concerns is not really a public meeting. That would be what I would say.
So I will pass that along. This is a planning commission meeting, right? Not something, I understand,
It's
I
still
understand.
governmental
I understand,
function. It's
and we will make
government
sure that we meet all regulations established by the Brown Act, and we will be in compliance with everything as we always are.
Let me be clear. The Brown Act is a minimum. You should be doing more, and that's what we're advocating. Okay, and
Yeah, I'm with-
It's the next form, the next level of open government.
Yeah, Bill, I'm with you completely on this one. Unfortunately, I didn't even know there was going to be a study session, so, until just yesterday.
It started out. I'm not blaming you guys.
Yeah, no, I understand.
People want to get it to us out here, but just so you know, I mean, there's 30 or 40 people that we have so far, and other people sign up because they're getting fed up with it. And we do tend to get a lot of it out here. I just talked to Fran tonight. We have something like 20 different projects between Hampton Bay and up here that are going on simultaneously, and all we have are volunteers like me and Leonard and other people that show up to all these different board meetings and gather the notes, and then we go back and try and strategize and figure out what to do. And you guys on the MCC, you know this, just keeping up with your own agenda. So it's like, how, this is not really transparent and not open to the public, You can do that dance, but we're not believing it.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Wait, Dave, I do want to just say one thing.
Yeah.
The entities that the policy has, that were considered when the policy was being discussed, were not, they were local coastal communities, San Luis Obispo,
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. It's not, it wasn't San Francisco, San Jose, New York, Chicago. They're not big cities, right? We're looking at coastal communities to make sure that we're comparing apples and apples. So just wanted to make that clear.
Well, I guess the key is communities, that when your neighbor is.
Okay, so Carol, sorry, I really want to get the agenda back on track. This is important. I understand people care about this. I care about it a lot. I'm on the board of the Committee for Green Foothills, and this is something I've been pushing over there as well. So we all care. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about it later. All right, so I'm going to return to our regular agenda. And Kirsten Pringle is going.
We didn't have consent.
Oh, I'm sorry, consent. Thank you. I jumped right over it. All right, that's what happens when I get flustered. We are on the consent agenda, and the only item on the consent agenda is approve the minutes for April 28th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for April 28th.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we're on to the regular agenda. And Kirsten, you are up. You can sit over here if you'd like. You want to stand over there? Okay. Do you have a remote for this, or do you want somebody to operate the slideshow? All right, thank you.
Also, just to introduce Mr. Baruto, Dave Baruto, whose hand was up. So this is Chief of Staff for Supervisor Dave Pine, who has been heavily involved in the project that you're about to learn about. So we appreciate both of you coming out tonight.
Hi guys, my name is Kirsten Pringle. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the council for making time for me tonight. I work in the county's Office of Sustainability, and if you haven't heard of us, that's okay because we're a new office. We were formed in July of 2014. We're an office under the county manager's office, and we work on a number of different environmental and sustainability programs. We work on a bunch of different levels, so we work in county facilities with county employees. We also work county-wide programs, and we work specifically in the unincorporated areas. So we do a lot of different things, from energy to stormwater to addressing sea level rise. And I'd be more than willing to come back at a later time to give you a full breadth of the different programs we do, if you guys are interested. But tonight I'm here to talk to you guys about one specific program that we're exploring right now called Community Choice Energy. So, what is Community Choice Energy? And I think everyone should have a pamphlet that we created. On the front it says Community Choice Aggregation, which is the term that's in the legislation in California. It means the same thing. We just thought Community Choice Energy was a much better term. Aggregation doesn't say anything about what it is, so we recently made that switch. So Community Choice Energy is a program that allows local governments to form together and pool or aggregate the electricity demand of their electricity customers in order to buy and potentially develop power. So there's Community Choice Energy, or CCE, programs all across the United States, and there's more coming under consideration. However, ours in California is special because it's really a way for us to become more environmentally conscious and to push for renewable energy development. And that's pretty unique about California's CCE programs. CCE in California was started in 2002 under Assembly Bill 117. So how does CCE work? Right now in San Mateo County, PG&E is your energy provider, and they purchase your energy, they deliver your energy and maintain the lines, and then they bill and meter you, and that's the way the process works, pretty simply. This would just take out that first part of the puzzle. So the CCE program would purchase the energy on behalf of all the electricity customers, but PG&E would continue to deliver and maintain the lines, and they would continue to bill and meter you. So a question we get a lot is, oh, what happens to the lines? PG&E continue delivering it. If I'm a CCE customer, they cut off power to me, and the answer is no. You are going to be treated the same. The only difference is who's purchasing your power for you. So why choose CCE if the only difference is who's purchasing your power? Well, like I said, in California, the main advantage of CCE is that there is more renewable power being purchased. So the power has more renewable energy content. And we're really excited about this because a lot of our local governments have climate action plans, their sustainability goals, and California has really been a leader in sustainability in the country. And this is one way to meet all these environmental goals we have. It's a great way to reduce our greenhouse gas footprint from purchasing energy. One thing we really like to push is that the main thing that this program offers is choice. It's a choice in who your energy purchaser is, and it's a choice in how much renewable energy content that you get to choose in between. It's also important to note that CCEs are not taxpayer subsidized, they're revenue supported. So they're supported through the surplus funds that they get. And because they run as a nonprofit, and they have a board that's made up of representatives for each of the cities and counties that are in their service territory, all their surplus funds can be put back into the community. And we're really excited about this aspect of it. Some of the ways these surplus funds can be used is to build out local renewable power development, to create tailored programs about energy efficiency that are really localized, that can really adapt to the type of communities that we have, or a bunch of different innovative ways that we can use these funds. And in the end, the main goal is really just to get more renewable energy in California. So the basic program features, how is this even created? This is such a new, different model. Well, the way we see it is that our local governments, any of the ones that are interested, would form what's called a Joint Powers Authority, or JPA. As I mentioned before, PG&E will continue to maintain and deliver the lines and all the infrastructure associated with electricity, and they would also continue to bill and meter you. The only difference to you as a customer, you continue to get a bill from PG&E, but it would just show up as a different line item on this bill, which will be in the next slide. I'll show you really quickly. You have the choice to go back to PG&E at any time. You'll get several notices if a program was started that this was coming, but anytime during the time you can go back to PG&E. And we also get a lot of questions about how are CCE's, Community Choice Energy Programs, regulated. They're regulated the same way as PG&E is through the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission. They have to put in what's called implementation plan, which is like a business plan, and they have pretty similar rules. So this is a sample energy bill from Marin Clean Energy. I'll talk a little more about it, but Marin Clean Energy was the first CCE program that was created in California. So as you can see, a lot of people don't look at their energy bill, which is funny, or they don't know how to read it. But this is what it looks like in case you've never seen it before. And a bill for a CCE looks the same as a bill for a PG&E customer. However, there's that separate line item. So all customers, whether PG&E customers or MCE or CCE customers, have the same delivery charge. And that's the charge for maintaining the infrastructure, which is vast, as you can imagine. However, there is a different charge whether you're a PG&E or a CCE customer about how much your generation charge is. And that's the charge for purchasing energy on your behalf. So I know this is kind of a new concept, so I think the best way to talk about it is talk about CCEs that are already currently operational in California. So the first one was in Marin. It was originally called Marin Clean Energy, and I think now they're focusing on being called MCE Clean Energy because they've expanded so much. They were started in 2010, and they started just in Marin County, and now they've actually expanded into unincorporated Napa County and the cities of Benicia, San Pablo, Richmond, and El Cerrito. So as you can see, they've expanded now beyond the Marin County borders. They have a 17-member board of directors, so they have one board member from each of the cities and the counties that they serve. They've been expanding rapidly. We're creating new energy development projects, so this really speaks to what I was talking about, using those surplus funds to create local energy. Just this year, they're going to offer a brand new local solar project, so they build a bunch of solar within their service territory, and now they're offering that to their customers. And they've also had significant job growth as a big half of their program and significant greenhouse gas emission reduction. So this slide really speaks to what I say when I say CCEs bring choice. There's choice in whether, one, you want to be a PG&E customer or a CCE customer. And there's choice in how much renewable energy you want your electricity to have. So right now, PG&E, I think it's actually a little higher this year. I think it's closer to 26 to 28% renewable energy content. So if you're a CCE customer under Marin Clean Energy, your default product, so what you get automatically, is 50% renewable energy. You also have the option to pay a little more, or opt up, as they call it, and go to 100% renewable. And just this year, as I was saying, they have 100% local solar option. So you can actually purchase energy that's all solar and all created within Marin County. Something you might notice is that under the 50% and 100% renewable options in Marin is actually cheaper than PG&E customers. So customers in Marin Clean Energy are actually saving money on their electricity bill.
How do you figure the 100% cheaper?
That's a good question. So they have a lot less overhead. They run on a pretty minimal staff.
I'm looking at the total product line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me explain some of the costs really quick too. So you'll see that the delivery cost across the board is the same. So whether you're a PG&E customer, CCE customer, you have the same delivery cost, and that's the cost for maintaining the lines, for infrastructure, all that stuff. The generation charge, and going back down to the final line actually, there's a fee called an exit fee that the CPUC puts on CCEs. And that's a fee in order to relieve the cost of burden from customers switching from PG&E to CCEs. So that's how PG&E customers, or people who want to stay with PG&E, all of a sudden don't have to pay a bunch of extra money. And so CCEs pay that extra charge. But even with that extra charge, it is cheaper because the generation charge is so cheap. So some of the reasons it's a little cheaper, one, CCEs are currently entering into contracts at an all-time low on the energy market. Renewable energy is really cheap right now. PG&E entered into a lot of these contracts a while ago when it was a lot more expensive. There's also a lot less overhead associated with CCEs. And a big difference is that CCEs are a nonprofit versus a company, so they don't have shareholders or end profits to invest in. And this is the same slide. This is just for the commercial customers. As you can see, the commercial costs are even more savings, and they are offered the same products that their residential customers are offered. So the next CCA to come in line, or CCA to come in line in California, was Sonoma Clean Power. And they started in 2014, so pretty recently in May. And then in December of 2014, they expanded to about additional 140,000 customers. And I think they've even expanded more since then. They have an 11% opt-out rate, which means in all their service territory, 11% of their customers choose to go back to PG&E. And they estimate 50% over time, though I actually think the 11% has dropped recently. I have to update these slides. They're saving a bunch of money. Once again, you'll see that they have lower rates than PG&E. And something really exciting about Sonoma is that they're lucky enough to have a geothermal event within their county. So their 100% renewable option is all 100% local within Sonoma County, and it's geothermal energy. And they also did this really cool project where they put solar panels on top of floating docks in one of their holding ponds. They work with their local water agency. And this, I think, is just another really cool example of how you can use these surplus funds to have really innovative local renewable energy products within the county. So this is pretty similar to Marin's chart. Once again, you can see that there's the same delivery fee. There's an additional exit fee, or PG&E fee as they call it. But the electric generation charge changes for the different customers and the different programs. Once again, emphasis of choice of what you want. And it's still cheaper. So their default product is 33% renewable, Marin was 50% renewable, so it's a little different. And they have the 100% renewable energy that is all geothermal. And once again, with the commercial customers, even more savings, same products. So I couldn't come up here and tell you about this program and tell you that there weren't any risks, because there's always risks with anything we do. So the main risk with starting a community choice energy program is market fluctuation and rate competition. So the market for renewable energy is at an all-time low right now, which is really great to enter into market conditions and enter into contracts. But we cannot guarantee that this is what it's going to be like over time. So the best way to mitigate this is right now, and I'll talk about this in a few slides, we're doing what's called a technical study to assess what the current market prices are and to try to analyze what we think current market prices might be. But we can't guarantee that. And of course, we would want to offer a program that would be cheaper for all our residents. We want our residents to save money on their energy bill. But we don't know how much we can guarantee that and for how long. Another way to mitigate that is we want to hire the best and the brightest in the energy market field to get these energy contracts for us. And also have a really diverse portfolio. So instead of buying all our energy up front, kind of buy that in different times and different phases, have a little bit of different kinds of energy, some solar, some wind, some geothermal. Those are some of the ways to mitigate that. Customer opt-out is always a risk as well. Obviously, if you have a bunch of customers leave your program and you don't have a critical mass in order to buy energy, then you don't have a program anymore. But we don't think this will be a big problem. Current CCAs are operating under about a 10% to 15% opt-out rate, which means 10 to 15% of your customers go back to PG&E. There's always political risk. Last year there was a bill on the docket, AB 1245, which really threatened the ability for CCEs to come in operation in new service territories. So we're always keeping our eye on what these risks might be and how this might affect our program. And then also political risk. This takes a lot of political capital. We really need to get our elected officials to buy into this. So momentum around the Bay. So I feel like everyone's, maybe because I'm into this all the time, I feel like everyone's talking about CCEs right now, all the different counties, all the cities. So obviously there's the CCEs currently in operation in Marin and Sonoma County. However, a bunch of other people are looking at it as well. So Alameda County is currently looking at it. They're also doing a technical study. In the South Bay, Santa Clara County, the cities of Cupertino, Los Altos, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale are looking at this. In Santa Cruz County and Monterey County, they're also a little bit ahead of us. They just completed their technical study and they're analyzing the results. And we anticipate that almost everyone in this general area will be looking at it soon, because this is a really great way to just reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So what are we doing right now in San Mateo County? Why am I even here? Well, we're currently in the exploration phase of this, so we haven't signed into this program at all. We're doing what's called a technical study right now. So the Board of Supervisors approved the funding for the technical study in February, and the study will start in June, and the results will be released in August. And I'll have a slide next that tells us all the things that are in technical study, but basically it'll tell us whether this is even feasible for a county before we can make a decision. And we'll be providing public updates along the way about how this study is going, but once the study results are released, it'll be open to anybody in the public to read. We've also been doing extensive outreach, which is one of the reasons I'm here today. I want everybody to know about this, because if we did start a study, the county did start a community choice energy program, then all our customers would automatically be enrolled in this, which is why we want your guys' feedback if this is something you want. We also want your feedback of what type of energy portfolio you might want. What do you want this program to look at, the goals. We really want our residents to be very engaged in this process. We recently had a business workshop, a business forum of about 50 local business representatives. We're also trying to get their support because obviously they have a stake in this as well. And we've been working with local stakeholders, realtor groups, environmental groups to hold different workshops. This is my time to say that I will be having a workshop, community workshop that's pretty much this presentation, but if you want to tell your neighbors, this Friday at 7 p.m. at the Pacifica Library in the community room. I'll be inviting people to that, and we'll be holding ongoing community workshops throughout the summer. And we just did a bunch of outreach at Earth Day events, so hopefully people are starting to hear about this. Our next step also is we have formed a county-wide advisory committee. So So this advisory committee will have representatives from each of the cities in the county, as well as representatives from the county themselves. And we also invited representatives from about 15 local organizations throughout the county. This represents a diverse group of interests, labor interests, environmental interests, social justice interests. We really wanted a diversity of views on this. However, all the meetings are open to the public. Our first meeting will be on May 28th in the San Mateo County Event Center. I can send out more details at 7 p.m. We'll have public comment throughout, and we'll be posting our first agenda and materials probably next week for that. And the big decision will come in fall when the technical study comes out. We'll probably hold some sessions to go over what the results of the technical study were, what does this mean for a county, and that's when the big decision will be made whether to start this program or not. So what is this technical study? What will we learn? Well, in short, it will show us the size of the program. So how much energy is our county actually using? This is actually very tightly held data, and we had to get special permission from it for PG&E. It also forecasts future demand as well as future prices, resource availability, so what type of energy is out there on the market, and what can we get for different prices. The ability to be rate competitive, like I said, a big goal of this is to try to create a program that will save our residents and customers money. The development of different power supplies, and risk analysis, of course. We want to make sure we've analyzed all the risks that could happen. Oh, sorry, that's a duplicate. So opportunities for engagement, like I said, we really want you guys to be engaged. So we have a mailing list that I have over here. If you guys would like to add yourself to the list, we send out pretty frequent updates about the status of our program. We also send out updates anytime that we have a public workshop. We'll send out notices about all our advisory committee meetings, as well as links to all of our materials. We really want as many people as possible to just know what we're doing and be engaged in this process. We have our monthly advisory committee meetings. Like I said, the first one is this month on May 28th, and it'll be held monthly on the fourth Thursday of the month at the San Mateo County Event Center. We have a wonderful Twitter called SMC Clean Power that we just try to get the word out there and engage people on. We have pictures. We try to make it as fun as possible. And also, please tell your neighbors. This is something that everyone is going to be affected about. It's a conversation we want to have. We know electricity and energy is maybe not a sexy topic, but I think it's an important topic. And this is our website up here, greensmcgov.org. That's the website for the whole Office of Sustainability. We do a number of different programs, as I mentioned, so feel free to check out our website. And you can also contact us at sustainability@smcgov.org. If you have a comment on this program or any of the other programs we do, feel free to email us. I also have my personal business cards if you want that. I love hearing from people. Thank you for your time, you guys, and open to any questions you have.
Great, thank you very much, Kirsten. I think we'll start with any questions the council has, and then we'll move on to public questions. Somebody on the council have questions?
Thank you for the
Okay.
presentation.
Thank you. I forgot to mention, this would not be possible without the support of Supervisor Dave Pine and Supervisor Carol Groom's office. They really spearheaded the efforts, and it's so nice to have elected officials that are really involved in sustainability and pushing this. It's been invaluable to the process. So.
Great. I did have one question,
Yes.
and then we'll go to the public. One question that came to my mind is what happens with people that are currently selling solar power back to PG&E?
That is a great question, and one I should actually include in my slides. So current CCEs in the Bay Area have actually offered a pretty high both feed-in tariff and net metering program, which means that customers who are making more energy than they need can sell it back to the grid. PG&E also currently offers this. PG&E prices is about 1 cent per kilowatt hour. I believe Marin Clean Energy is doing it at 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's actually a huge incentive to have more residential solar panels.
And Sonoma's doing 23 cents.
23 cents. So they actually offer it at the actual market price. And that's something we're excited about as well. It's a way to really encourage more people to be more energy efficient while having renewable energy at their home as well.
Okay, great. Public questions? Come up to the podium, please, so you can get caught on the video. Go ahead.
heard about this, I don't know, a week ago at the San Mateo County chapter of the California Special Districts Association meeting. And the chapter appointed 2 people to represent special districts at these 16 months worth of time meetings. Did you mention 16 months?
I believe that'll be that long.
So I would have gotten involved, except I'm maxed out on bandwidth, and 2 other people really wanted to do it, Harvey Rarback and Kathleen Slater Carter. But as soon as you put the 2 terms in the same sentence, San Mateo County and Joint Powers Authority, I get extremely apprehensive, because this county has a long, sordid history of forming large numbers of JPAs to slide things past the public without any public visibility at all. They did that with the garbage contract on the Bay side. They did that with the Comcast contract. Not one member of the public knew that the county was negotiating with Comcast, and they screwed us on that because of that. And that was done intentionally. And so I just have major reservations anytime San Mateo County is involved in JPAs. So I want to hear what the protections are going to be, how there's going to be widespread notification of every single meeting of that board, and the unincorporated areas have to have more representation than one person that the county appoints as a political favor. Every one of the 3 advisory councils has to appoint somebody. Now, you said 17 board members in Marin. That sounds like one from every city and probably one from the county. But unincorporated areas like this do not get proper representation of that structure. The Mosquito Abatement District is a classic example of that. The San Mateo County Mosquito Abatement District. So the structure needs to provide for better representation for the unincorporated areas, and that specifically means that in the areas where there's an advisory council, the county does not pick the representative, the advisory council picks the rep. And is it elected officials, or do the city councils appoint somebody who isn't necessarily on
We
the
send it to
council?
the city managers and let them decide, and the same with the organizations that we invited. We didn't elect to appoint anybody, we tagged kind of the organizations and told them to tweet.
Okay, so
And David Bruno might be able to
So
appoint this as well.
it could be, but isn't required to be, an elected official then?
No, it is not required.
I'm not sure if we're talking about the same thing yet. The advisory committee, again.
I'm talking about the JPA itself.
Right, there is no
Oh,
JPA
okay.
yet.
Well, yeah, I expect 16 monthly meetings to.
JPA by law, the way it's has to be constructed will be as agencies, cities, and the county, if they opt in, they'll be awarded a seat. Because the county is the representative body that is incorporated, the county representative is the representative, the county agency representative. I could perhaps bring it up with our attorneys to see if there is some room in that, but I don't know if there is.
JPA is nothing but a contract between 2 or more government agencies. You can put any terms whatsoever into the contract upon agreement of all the signatories. So you could structure it the way I'm suggesting. This county is not like the unincorporated areas, and they screw us at every turn. And you know, what's the biggest single electricity consumer on the coastline? Do you know? It's the one that I've been on the board of for 18 years. $22,000 a month electric bill. The sewer authority. And so the structure that you're describing means we have no representation.
The structure they're describing, again, that would be the legal construct, that as far as I know is requisite. And given the possibility that there would be that kind of representation from the unincorporated territories, it's a governance question for the other cities, because, again, there's one agency, one vote, and then in some ways the county gets 3 or 4. But the dialogue that we're going to have with our agencies. not saying it's wrong or right, but there is the question of government.
Bill, just a second. I'll toss in, you could include some of the special districts such as GCSD or MWSD. They are pseudo-government bodies, and you could write the JPA to include them. They are functioning as governments in many ways for the Midcoast.
Theoretically possible, I can't answer that one.
I understand, I'm just raising it.
That will be
Address the advisory.
explored at the
Yeah.
advisory committee level over time, and then the board will decide.
Right.
And thank you for your comment. We're definitely interested in getting as many people at these meetings and getting everybody's feedback, so.
Yeah. All right, Bill?
And if you have any suggestions on how we can reach more people, I always.
Make sure you get your query.
Okay.
So before Leonard brought these up, I had a simple question, just, any of the members of the MCC on the advisory, were you asked to be on the advisory committee?
No, we were not. But it sounds like with Catherine and, who was the other person?
Probably right.
Yeah, it sounds like we've got reasonable coverage. But yeah, we will follow it.
So just as a more vivid example of the kind of example that Leonard pointed out, and that, thank you, Leonard, for setting me up so I'm usually looking like a bad guy. We have been through before, but which sounds like a very similar structure. And the fact that the county is our only representative on there, and then the 13 cities in San Jose County get the vote. So for, I don't know, 20 to 30 years I've been living here, and since, getting MCC going, we have continually left out of everything. And when in fact anything did happen out here, because Catherine Bay has a representative on the CK, the bike trail funds, the other kind of funds, always moved to Catherine Bay, even though for 30 some odd years we've been asking for a bike trail. So, Leonard has a very good point in that I know, and I understand the problem, but the 13 cities certainly don't want to give up their power of money. Anyway, you're going to be aware of Anyway, where was it going? The issue becomes, they're not going to give us power. If I was on the other side, I'd probably argue the same thing, but we will be left out, and so that's a hard sell. It's when we get dragged into these things, we end up getting the short shrift. And whether it's CCAG or ABAG or any of these things, we see them pushing over the hill and forcing things on us that we don't want.
Right, and
I have one other thing that's on the slide, I want to know why San Francisco went on hold and it isn't pursuing anymore.
That was political stuff within San Francisco.
They are pursuing, actually.
They are pursuing it. They actually recently went off hold.
The sign said on hold.
I know, I have to update it, sorry, for recent development.
Why did it stop and was there anything?
It's a complicated place.
Yes,
Well, that's why we look.
politics.
But relative to how this impacts residents, I mean, my perspective, this program would impact everyone equally. I mean, this is electrical power delivery, is purchasing on behalf of residents, the programs apply universally. There really is no allocation of resource that's different in one community or the other. You have a program for net metering, that affects every resident. There's no resource that we deprive in the code.
right, it's the representation issue. For example, the Midcoast is almost exactly the same population as Half Moon Bay. But if Half Moon Bay has a representative and we don't, then Half Moon Bay will be seen as speaking for the coast, which is an issue for the rest of us.
Well, I understand that, and certainly I can't speak to.
I know, that's why we're raising the issue.
But again, the application of the program, there is no specific geographic.
Right, it's the decision, the basis for the decisions that we're concerned about, because cities often have a different set of concerns than people that are not in cities. And that's the issue.
Yeah, if you have a 13 or 17 or 20 member board, they're going to be discussing processes and how it affects. And how would you feel if you went at the table?
No, I'm hearing the concern. I think I understand it. What I'm trying to respond with a little bit is, again, the application of the program to the CCE are universal. It wouldn't necessarily, there is no resource diversion from one portion to the other.
A certain fraction of it is, we're going out in the future, the board can change policies and do other things, and how do we know everything is staying?
I'm not sure what it will be, but
That's the risk.
Well, so for example, Sonoma and Marin have funded clean energy. And, you know, to choose a completely bald example, the rest of the county could decide that the Midcoast was a great place for a solar farm. And we might not appreciate that.
Can I spread that rumor?
Absolutely.
It's already out there. Just left the room.
So, no, I mean, but I did choose that deliberately, because in the past, joint powers bodies of other kinds have made those kinds of decisions. And that's why we're concerned about representation. Even though, as you say, in theory, it's uniform, the fact is what goes into making decisions for investment and everything else is not uniform.
with those possible exceptions, I will certainly relay those concerns back
Thank
to
you.
our supervisors and talk about that as we go along, but these are things we should articulate as well to the advisory committee itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and Catherine and Harvey are both very much aware of those concerns. So we'll get, through the advisory committee at least, that voice will be heard. All right, does anybody else want to ask a question or make a...
Just real quick questions. I noticed that...
Can you come up to the podium, because otherwise the video won't pick it up.
So I saw the cost up there. I was wondering, especially for Marin, over like a 3-year period, were the costs on average less than staying, for instance, with PG&E? And then regarding renewable energies, I know that PG&E is moving possibly towards legislation to address the issue of renewable energies, taking away income from them while they still have the expenses to maintain equipment and power lines and that type of stuff. Has there been any evaluation of future legislation and how that would impact?
So your first question was about pricing in Marin. So Marin actually started, I think, slightly above PG&E, a couple cents above when they first started. They've actually gone down over time. And one of the benefits of Marin and Sonoma is that while PG&E changes their prices several times per year, both those CCUs only change it once per year. So they set it once, and it's the same until the next funding or the next pricing cycle. Did that address your question? Okay, yeah. And I think they change it every year in spring. They have what's called it's like an open something, but that's where they go after new contracts. And then once they secure those new contracts, that's when they change their energy price based on what they're getting. Open season, that's what they call it. And all that information is on Marin's website. They're pretty transparent about that. And your second question is about legislation and how that might change. I haven't heard about the legislation. There is that what's called the exit fee or PG&E fee you saw on the slides for Marin and Sonoma, and that kind of does address already the concerns about the burden of maintaining the power line and CCU customers removing themselves from PG&E and not putting that burden of price on still PG&E customers. We are doing that technical study, and we're trying to assess as much risk as possible, and we work with really highly qualified CCA consultants. One of them actually helped start Marin Clean Energy, so she has a lot of experience, and they kind of are ear to the ground about upcoming legislation. But thanks for pointing that out.
All right. Does anybody else have a question? Bob, did you have something? No? Okay. Sure, go ahead. You haven't spoken yet. Again, please come to the podium so the video picks it up. I'm sorry, but it really is important for the people watching the video later to hear the questions.
What existing renewable energy do we have in existence right now in San Mateo County?
That is a good question.
I mean, outside of, large corporate deployments, not a lot. That's not really big farms or anything like that. We certainly don't have these, geothermal vents or anything. But the idea is, like it's happening in Sonoma, is once you get the program up and running, and I know Chris had made reference to some funding availability. What that is like investor-owned utility, the CCE will go out and purchase power on a wholesale basis and sell it to retail. There's a delta. A little bit goes to administrative costs, but then there's more than to invest that doesn't go back to shareholders. So what the Lynn and Sonoma are doing is they're working on partnerships or doing direct developments themselves and have developed many megawatts locally to augment their power supply. And that's the goal. Again, it takes some time to ramp up to it, but over time, we hope that, yes, we can find some rooftops, we can find some sites, potentially not a farm in Midcoast, but places where this might be appropriate and that could generate their own power. And one thing Kristen didn't talk about, it's a small point, but I think a worthy point. When this legislation was passed in 2002, yes, there's an environmental underpinning to it, but this was also in response to rolling blackouts. This really had everything to do with energy. Because what this allows communities to do is say, look, we can buy our own power. And we can develop our own power sources locally so we can take back control so we cannot be subject to external manipulators. That was really what it was about. But we're happy to say it also has this extra added benefit of accelerating our usage of renewable, bringing down our carbon footprint, and helping that market grow. I hope I over-answered your question.
Leonard, you have another question?
Actually, I put my hand up before David commented on the rolling blackouts. And the infrastructure technology doesn't allow what you would hope for. During the fake energy crisis, it was a decade and a half ago, it was totally fake, and that's been proven. I got a call from one of the green energy suppliers trying to get me to convert over, and I told them, I have one question. If the answer to it is yes, I'll switch. If the answer to it is no, I won't. And the one question is, are you going to keep my power on when PG has rolling blackouts? And they said, no, it can't be done unless every single customer in the area is signed up with the new thing. And, maybe on the Midcoast we can get there. Because there's somewhat of a different attitude here, but it is a technical problem that I can't see it ever being solved.
Except under CCE, everyone's rolled automatically. So once the CCE's up and running, everyone's in.
Oh, that was the opt-out?
That's the opt-out.
Okay, so it could, in fact, if people don't opt out, it could, in fact, insulate the area from...
There's electrons coming, we can get.
And by the way, for those who don't know, I'll point out during the fake energy crisis, there were it was either 4 or 5 cities in California that did not have rolling blackouts at all. I only remember 2 of them. I forget the other 2, but the 2 that I remember are LA and Palo Alto. What do those 2 cities have in common? They have their own city departments of power, and they weren't part of the conspiracy.
Yeah, Alameda was another, for the same reason. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you for your time.
And keep us up to date with how things go.
Could you send a PDF of your presentation so I can post it on our website?
Yes, I think I already sent it to Dave.
I remember you were going to, but I don't think I saw it.
Yeah, I'll send, I thought I sent you the PDF, but I'll send you guys the PDF version with my contact information. And I'm sitting around the contact list for all you guys, just so you can be our mailing list and get all our updates. And I try to stay pretty frequent about what we're doing. So.
Great, thank you. All right, we are now on to our next agenda item, which is long-term parking and storage of vehicles on Princeton streets. And this is an issue, let me be very clear, not of, sure, go ahead and grab your stuff, of vehicles that are exceeding the 72-hour limit, but they're moving around and still staying as a group occupying parking space. So Nicholas, you're you're up on this one.
I'm sorry, I was getting, I'm starting to get a little headache. Could you repeat what you had just said,
That-
so I don't repeat it again?
No problem. This is the issue for people who are legally parking. They're not exceeding the 72-hour limit, but nonetheless, they have vehicles or groups of vehicles which are continuously occupying large amounts of parking along the streets.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we had been told through the Plan Princeton process is that there's concern regarding long-term parking in Princeton and the impact that it has on the community. And so we were discussing internally, how do we resolve this issue? And the best one that came forward was a restriction on nighttime parking between certain hours, which have yet to be identified, because we haven't gotten input from the community yet. And essentially what that would do is put a stop to this type of behavior. You know, things that need to be considered include, because it is Princeton, if you're there for fishing, right? If you say the hours are 10 to 6, but people will leave to go fishing at 5, you create a problem. So how do we identify the right, well, first off, how do we identify, is this the right solution? And if it is, what are those hours? And so before we start proceeding with that, we want to hear from the community, from you guys. And that's why I am here.
All right, you want to start, Lisa?
I just want to clarify with what you said. You said this wasn't about people, this was, people move their car every 72 hours.
Yeah.
But it sounded like from what you said, this was just long-term parking beyond the 72 hours.
I think they're similar things. So I stated my own opinion, but what I was trying to say is there are people who are legally parking, they're not subject to tickets or anything else, but they're occupying parking spaces long-term in the community on the streets.
Right.
Well, so I have several questions.
Absolutely.
I don't live in Princeton, but I drive through there to get to my community, so I through there a lot. So what I see is certain businesses who augment or perhaps even have their whole business operating from the right-of-way. And so this involves storage of vehicles or large equipment along the road, sometimes double parked, rows of vehicles double parked on each side, and even, you know, with the wheel on the pavement, and even a red cone there so you don't run into it. And these are long-term parked. And so this, you know, we're well aware that pedestrians and bicycles have a tricky time and this exacerbates it, obviously. So I don't know, several years ago, 4 or 5, I don't know, years ago, I contacted the sheriff about this, and then I noticed that, so they go and put the citation on the windshields of all these vehicles, and then eventually they got them all moved. But it wasn't long before they were all back. And then you get tired of doing that. Telling them to do that, and maybe the sheriff gets tired of it too. So is this discussion happening at the Princeton Code Enforcement Task Force or outside of that?
So this issue was originally raised through the Plan Princeton process prior to my being involved with it. So I do not have firsthand experience with the whole history of it. So just to put that out there, this is discussed during our Code Enforcement Task Force.
How often does that meet?
About quarterly. And so,
does the sheriff
Yes.
have they been periodically doing what I described, or do they wait until somebody complains, or what's their take on it?
both.
Do they say that approach isn't working?
Well, so yeah, it's our understanding that that approach is not working. People are parking cars of all sorts for long durations of time. There are boats, there are other issues, right? This action is strictly and solely in response to concerns that we received during the Plan Princeton process. And this is not in, last time we had discussed this, there was a question as to was this to address a specific entity, and that is not the case. This is the idea that we have conceptually, without having discussed this with the community yet, is that we would have a no nighttime parking throughout Princeton, and that this would resolve the concerns that we received regarding parking issues throughout Princeton. And so right now, the sheriff's office has done ticketing, the sheriff's office has done warnings, but it doesn't always work, right? If we tell you you have to move your car every 72 hours, if you move it to the other side of the street, you've complied, right?
I'm not seeing this happen, though. I drive.
I can only tell you what I'm being told, though.
All right, yeah, but.
I mean, we're on the same
drive
side here,
through
right? I
there.
mean, we're arguing the same point. So I think saying whether it's being done or not, I appreciate that, and I'll make sure that I bring that back to the sheriff's office. But, I think I know that what I'm out here trying to do is identify what is the solution to the issue, and that's what you want as well, right? So
Yeah,
I guess how do we have that dialogue?
I'm trying to verify if that approach has been exhausted, as unworkable. And I don't.
And I'd say yes.
Anecdotally driving through, I see the same row, the weeds are growing up around these vehicles. They have not been moved in a long time.
I can only tell you what I've been told, and that is that
Okay, so
those attempts have
initial
been made.
thoughts are, if you were to determine at some hour during the night when this would work and not impact fishermen or restaurant people, then what about the person who has a house there and has a guest and they want to park in front of their house and they couldn't do that? So it would seem like it would be a good idea to make sure we haven't exhausted the approach for the sheriff to make sure people don't park longer than 72 hours.
And as far as our opinion is that we have exhausted that, and it has not worked.
Now, is the proposal to be just within Princeton, or will it go up Airport Street?
Just within Princeton. It will not go on Airport Street.
Right, so clearly, anybody who owns property within Princeton is going to have the opportunity to get a permit. What happens, every city that doesn't allow overnight parking because there are very few cities where people have enough off-street parking for just their own vehicles, let alone guests. And you can't be towing guest cars away.
And those are things.
Or somebody who's at a bar and decides they're too drunk to drive home, so they leave their car. They don't want their car towed. You don't want to encourage them to drive home drunk.
Well, and the intent is, as we had this conversation, was not if you park your car there, you get towed, right? It's you get a ticket, right? And the way it works right now with the 72-hour rule is the sheriff's office go and they mark your tire with chalk or something, and then they come back, and if it's been moved, it's been moved. If it hasn't, then you can get a citation. And this would say, no parking between X and Y, and if your car is parked there between X and Y, then you get a citation. I have actually lived in a city that does it this way, and I can tell you that people don't park on the street. I made the mistake one time. I read the sign wrong. We won't get into that. But
yeah, but here on the coast, I don't think we want to be that draconian.
well, and that's why it's strictly, it'd be kept to this one community.
Another question, there are several road segments in Princeton that are not in the county-maintained road system. Where
We have
would
no
they
authority
stay?
over them, is my understanding.
Well, that's interesting, because the one time I did, years ago, contact the sheriff about these, and I think I sent you all a picture where they're double parked and all, that's on two sections of Yale where it's not, but the sheriff did act, and they did get that street cleaned up, at least for a couple of weeks.
Let me ask them and talk to them again. Maybe there's miscommunication the first time around.
Right, so I want to come back to so that there's an existing rule, if somebody's parked more than 72 hours, they can get a ticket.
Correct.
And you don't have to tag them and then see if it's moved after it's tagged. That's for towing. So they can go in, mark the tires, and come along 73 hours later and just write a ticket for every single vehicle that hasn't been moved.
That's been explained. Was that a question or a statement?
That was a statement. And,
Oh, okay.
and as far as I know, that has not been done. Am I incorrect?
Based on the information I've received, yes. That is incorrect.
It has not been done?
No,
Or
it has,
been
it
done?
has been done, and cars that have been marked have been moved.
There's certainly a lot of evidence that it has not been done.
So
So
listen,
what-
I hear that
Yeah,
there's
that-
concern that it hasn't been done. What I'm saying is, all the conversations I've had with the sheriff's office, they are telling me that it has been done. So, I
guess before we change any parking regulations, I would want to have an explicit period of time where the sheriffs are doing their best to enforce this. And I know the sheriffs do not see themselves as parking control officers, and they probably don't want to be parking control officers. But if we put this other regulation in force, they're going to have to be parking control officers as well, even at a time when they have fewer officers on duty. So I don't see that as a particularly viable solution.
There's other storage in the right-of-way that's not on wheels. And that's, we had DPW come here last year and talk about this for residential streets. So, we talk about cleaning up Princeton. This is pretty straightforward. The regulations are already there, that they could go in and work on this. And I was kind of surprised that they haven't been. It's like I say, I see these cars in there, well, covered in, the weeds are around them like they've been there for the season. And the businesses which have extensive numbers of vehicles in there, if they had to move all those vehicles, that would be a real challenge. I don't think it's enough street.
They'd have to close the street off.
I understand, but what you have to keep in mind is, if they move that car 10 feet,
No, it's 200
they've
feet minimum.
complied.
No, it's
Spirit.
200 feet minimum under state law.
Yeah, but these cars are parked like this. To move them 10 feet, they gotta move them all out of there and
Okay.
re-park them. It's like.
Can I make a suggestion?
Okay, and so Lisa and I have been monopolizing this. I apologize. Laura, Dan, Chris, and I think Chris was first, all wanted to say something, so I'll shut up. But Chris can go first, and then Laura, and then Dan.
All right, I don't know how this fits in with public opinion, and with all due respect to Lisa, but I just, I'm not really seeing what the issue is. And frankly, a 72-hour policy is clearly a failed policy. That's not working. Those cars are there. They're not being moved. It's an extra burden on the sheriff's department. For me, that's Princeton. If they want change, you could walk through Princeton, with a 500-page binder writing down the number of zoning and other infractions there.
Yeah.
So if cars are not wanted there, then we have to go forward with the plans of Princeton and change some zoning. To me, that's the only thing that's going to work there. This ticketing, Princeton is not a super highway. Big wave aside, Princeton is not a super highway to get from one place to the other. It's a cluttered, hectic, vibrant, industrial burg. And personally, that's what I love about it. I love seeing yards or lots with cars on it and people working out of Quonset huts and things like that. That, to me, is Princeton. And whether it's the twice as nice warehouse with 3 semi-trucks blocking off California Street, or whatever that street is over there, or these cars, which, it was a double row for sure, absolutely. But, I don't see that it's causing transportation problems. There's no sidewalks anyways. You're walking through Princeton, you're on an adventure anyways, or cycling. And to me, it's part of the community, and to focus sheriff's efforts and other community resources on, in my opinion, a failed policy. This is the Princeton drug war here. It's not working. And unless there's going to be some kind of larger wholesale change, I don't think that picking around the edges of this is really gonna do anything. And again, like, not to be facetious, and with all due respect to Lisa, I'm not clear what the problem is as far, if it's visual blight, I can understand. Some people don't like the cars and the lots with the weeds and stuff. I get that. But as far as the functioning of the streets and safety of getting through there, I haven't heard of a lot of accidents or problems or injuries there. There's not a lot of traffic jams in there. And so for me, the parking in Princeton is not an issue. And when I hear things like no overnight parking, to me, that is, again, targeting a problem that is not a problem. I mean, we don't have a bunch, fishermen, they're probably not parking in Princeton, they're probably parking over in the harbor parking lot. There might be a couple people there. I know we have one issue with a particular motorhome that leaves trash and seems to move around. But are we gonna have a policy for one vehicle? And and me personally, I don't believe in no on-street parking. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. And I would not like to see Princeton become an area that has no overnight parking, no street parking, all these, you gotta get a permit, all these rules. That's San Francisco. This is Princeton. This is rural. This is industrial. It's personally what I love about it. And so for me, I feel like I would like nothing done, or pull back even.
Thank you. Thanks. Laura?
I'm going to withdraw my comment, but I think it would be interesting for me to hear what Lisa's thoughts are in response to how Chris is reading this topic.
Okay, let's hear from Dan first, and then Lisa can speak then.
Okay, I just want to be very clear that I think it's a terrible idea to have no parking in the evening, at night. It's very obvious that there's at least one, everybody knows there's at least one property owner that's abusing. There may be a couple more that are minorly abusing. I think there's one property owner, very easy to find out, everybody knows who it is, abusing the situation. And to change the parking laws, make it complicated for the county, the sheriff to enforce all this, just piles on complications. It hurts the other property owners that are responsible, that are operating there now. It hurts visitors from temporarily using it for whatever occasion, it was a weekend or what, guests. The list goes on and on and on. You're saying that you have difficulties enforcing the letter of the law. When the spirit of the law is just being abused, and it's obvious. It's obvious. So, bring out the tow trucks. I mean, make sure, all you have to do is enforce it, and then the problem will go away. But it's clear, you say that you're hearing that everything's being enforced, but, you drive by there tonight. It's obvious it's not being enforced. So, I think it's a bad move to consider this.
Nicholas, do you want to answer any of those?
Yeah, this is why we come out here, right, to get this type of feedback. So, after we get input from the public, I'll make sure that we bring that back. I think the one thing I would say is, it's rather insignificant, I think, but that 200, you have to move your car 200 feet rule is actually not a rule.
Yeah, I was wrong. That's based, that's from city to city.
Right.
But it's the typical.
But we don't have that. And so that's why moving a car across the street, moving it 10 feet, meets the letter of the law, right? And I'm not a lawyer, this isn't court, so we're not gonna argue letter versus spirit of the law. I'm just telling you what is happening. So, with that said, that doesn't negate the fact that what I've heard so far is two members saying, bad idea. What I've heard is go back and use the tools that are in the toolbox to the furthest extent possible, and there's a belief that we haven't done that, so I'll bring that feedback back. Obviously, I want to hear from the community more.
I wasn't
Lisa,
done.
yeah?
I wasn't done.
Oh.
I wanted to describe, I don't think perhaps people who don't live there or go through there a lot are getting what the issue really is. It's like, we're trying to deal with a situation which prevents people from parking. Basically, the streets are lined with vehicles there so that nobody can park there. It's all used up. And that, so it's kind of different, I think, than.
I'm gonna take it from a different, I'm gonna help you, but I'm gonna take it from a different approach. We've heard from, I mean, Chris cited the businesses and visitors. The people we've heard from are the other businesses, or are the businesses, I should say, and are the residents that they can't park.
Yeah.
And that,
okay.
they're having trouble parking. And, you know, like I said, I came on this late, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know anything about specific businesses or specific residents or whatnot, right? I am here to solicit feedback from an idea that was raised, and we're looking to improve a situation in a community, and that's that, right? I don't want to make this seem like we're attacking any individual or trying to implement something against one person. I mean, we're trying to improve Princeton, as Supervisor Horsley has been trying to do for the last 4+ years.
This did come up at the steering committee, Plan Princeton Steering Committee, and the business owner there mentioned this, that he was having, and he just has one location, and he was having trouble operating his business because the larger business, which was taking up a lot of spaces, was just encroaching right into the area that he would normally use. Sorry.
No, I'm interested to hear what you're saying. Okay, so if I understand this correctly then, there are certain businesses that are using up these areas that residents, or I'll say smaller businesses, would be using, like in any town, for parking. Have I got that correct?
Visitors, someone coming to ride their bicycle, to park their truck, you know, for a bike trip or just a day trip. It could be anybody.
Yeah, there's no parking left because vehicles.
It's all consumed.
Basically, what this is, normally, so you have open storage in Princeton. You can rent a lot, and you can store your junk there. I mean, even Sam's Chow, they have their vehicles parked in one of these lots. But you could really save money if you just stored all your stuff in the street.
That's
what's going on, because that leaves no place for other businesses who want to be getting in and out and park something short-term, or visitors want to park. It's all used up. And
I'm sorry. I understood. Okay, my suggestion is this. So it sounds to me like people are saying, wait, the sheriff is not, this isn't happening. Cars aren't being ticketed. Why can't we look at a time frame and ask for those records? Let's see how many and who's been ticketed. I mean, that doesn't seem like it's rocket science here.
Right, and, or another way to look at it is, if the sheriff says they don't have the resources to enforce the existing parking
Yeah.
ordinance, then perhaps what we should do is fund a parking control officer to come out here once or twice a week to enforce it, rather than try and pass a whole new regulation when we already have one on the books. I would be really reluctant to support a new regulation when we haven't enforced the existing one. And if the county's existing parking ordinance is, if it moves more than 6 inches, it's not a parking violation, then I would suggest that the county board of supervisors might want to amend the county parking ordinance, because this can't be the only part of the county where that issue exists.
And like I say, when I complained about this several years ago, this particular block was cleaned out. I mean, the sheriff, I had pictures even of the little tickets he put on each window of these vehicles, and then a week or so later, they were all gone. So, I mean, they did it then, but then I've never seen it happen again since. And it gradually, pretty quickly, actually, the vehicles all came back.
Could you report back on that? I mean,
Absolutely.
can you
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
get the data for us?
Yeah.
The other
I'd
thing-
be happy to try to. I don't know if that's, I don't know. When it comes to the sheriff's office, I don't want to promise any information, because the sheriff's office does not operate under the same rules as other government right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
I understand.
I got Bill over here laughing, I don't know how to answer this question, but, there's certain information from the sheriff's office that is not public information for safety reasons and whatnot. So I don't know what I can give you and what I can't. So
Well, how about this? What
I'd be
if you
happy to
told-
talk to them. That's probably the most I can commit to right now.
How about if you report back to us and tell us why we can't have that information? Does that seem fair?
Maybe it'd be easier to have.
I'm just gonna bring county council out for that one.
Maybe it'd be easier to have a county intern to do a 72-hour stakeout.
We're kind of running thin at the county. I don't know if we have an intern.
You don't have any
we just,
extra interns?
Sit out there for 72 hours. You got to pay overtime and maybe hazard pay.
If you have,
Sheriffs are cheaper.
Really,
No,
really, drones.
We didn't buy any drones.
Dave?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if you
I'll
have
find out.
50 cars stored on the street, you have to move them all. That's gonna be a hassle. And if they make that happen every week,
Yeah.
maybe they'll change their behavior. It's just that, like I say, I saw it happen one time and I haven't seen it since. And so, we're all good now. And even, like I say, and even junk now is in there with the cars. Without junk, without wheels, I mean, just crates or whatever. And just to make a point, hope it's not too snarky, but, when you talk about designating no parking, just to keep in mind that the MCC asked for just one little segment on Prospect to be designated and marked as no parking, and that was 16 months ago. And it was approved by the Board of Supervisors last October, and it is still not marked.
Yeah, good point.
So maybe the quickest results could be if the sheriff would spend some more time working on that. And I would like to know more about how it works. Like I say, I did see this happen. One street got cleared, more than one. West Point, Yale, a bunch of other places, they cleared them out. There were boat trailers and stored vehicles.
Maybe what I'll do then is see if I can get Lieutenant Muncy to.
Explain to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That'd
better
be
to
good.
come from him than me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just talked to him yesterday about something else, and we can certainly get him to come over and talk to us. But I'm pretty confident from the discussion I had with him yesterday, he's going to say he doesn't have resources to dedicate to parking enforcement unless, it's seen as a major safety or other issue. So, I'm happy to invite him here to talk, or I can go talk to him again and report
We'll
back.
bring him here, we could do it our next
Sure,
meeting. maybe.
happy to do that.
But yeah, I'm totally, unlike Chris who thinks it shouldn't change, I really think this is a problem that needs to be addressed. I'm just not sure we're ready to go to looking at no parking.
And there are several sets of problems here. There are vehicles that are basically abandoned. There's already regulations for those. There are businesses that are basically using the public right-of-way as their storage. That's not generally a good thing. And then there's people, perhaps, that are playing the shell game of moving every 72 hours. And I think the only one of those that is solved by this new proposal are the ones that are moving their vehicles around. And I honestly don't see that being enforced any better than the existing one for the same reasons. So unless there's a strong belief it would be enforced better, or there would be special funding for enforcing it, I can't see it actually being very effective. All right, any other questions from the council? All right, does anybody from the audience wish to ask a question or make a statement? I saw Leonard's hand go up first. So Leonard, you're first. Bill, you're second.
Nope, now we have someone else.
And you will be third. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Marcia. You'll be third, Marcia.
Let me start off by saying when I was 14, we moved to a small city in Southern California, surrounded on all sides by the city of LA. And when we moved there in 1969, at the city boundary, all around the city, there were signs that said 2-hour parking 2:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. Have to let that one sink in. 2-hour parking 2:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. That meant you had to move your car in that time period. And it worked very well for that city. except apparently not well enough, because a few years after we moved there, they said, oh, screw it, no parking 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And as far as I know, that's the way it still is, except in the apartment district. It's really nice for the police, because they can stop and question anyone parked there, and they did. I used to watch out the window, and they did that. It's really nice to get up in the morning and have this empty street. Unless you've experienced it, you have no comprehension of what it's like to not have the street lined with cars. It is really, really nice. There's enough existing laws here that need to be enforced. First of all, the sheriff, in my experience, is loath to enforce parking restrictions. There are commercial vehicles parked on Coral Reef and Sonora, the well driller, that he's been told for 15 years not to park them there, but every time he's told, they disappear for a month or two, and then exactly as Lisa described, they just come back because the sheriff won't deal with it. And Nicholas knows exactly where I'm talking about, and by the way, they've been back for a while. You need to deal with that again. Exactly as I told you, they would come back, and they did. I just haven't bothered to bug you about it.
It's a dangerous turn, too.
Yes. So, what are the solutions here? First of all, the county requires full on-site parking for all projects. It'd be nice if they actually enforced that, because if every project had full on-site parking, as the parking chapter in the zoning ordinance requires, this would be a non-issue. For guest parking, the way the city I'm talking about did it is, you could, if you had guests, you could go to City Hall. It was a city of about 25,000 people, so City Hall was at the most a mile away. You could go to City Hall and you could get a temporary permit, I think for up to 30 days or up to 2 weeks, something like that. But it wasn't valid for the people that lived there. It was only valid for their guests. I don't remember how they enforced that, but some provision for guest permits could be made. One of the things that I think the county needs to adopt county-wide is, under no conditions whatsoever are those pods allowed to be parked in the public right-of-way. Put it on your own property. The giant steel boxes.
Oh, got it.
PODS, portable on
on-demand storage. That's one of the brands, yeah.
It needs to be unconditionally, totally illegal to park those in the public right-of-way. And I would ask the Midcoast Council to agendize writing a letter to the county to request that. They're a severe hazard on the residential streets because you can't see past them. And they're a visual blight. There's so many things wrong with it. They just shouldn't be allowed. Put it in your driveway or don't have it there at all. And Lisa mentioned other junk that doesn't move. I don't know, since I didn't have time to research the county ordinances on this, I don't know whether this is illegal or not. I would assume that it is. Anything that can't move under its own power, like it doesn't have wheels or it's a derelict vehicle or whatever, should not be allowed even for one overnight. Simply should not be allowed in the public right-of-way if it doesn't move on its own. It's not a vehicle.
You just cleared all of El Granada streets out.
There are boats parked in El Granada for years at a time that rarely move. That shouldn't be allowed. Those are also a sightline safety hazard. Nothing is enforced here. A lot of people live in the unincorporated area specifically because they know they can get away with things that they can't get away with in a city. And that's just wrong. All of this Wild West stuff that goes on here simply because it's unincorporated shouldn't be allowed. Back to non-maintained roads. Nicholas, you're wrong. The non-maintained road only has to do with whether County Public Works is going to go maintain the surface. It has nothing to do with law enforcement or any other laws at all. It is simply whether or not DPW will maintain the surface of the road. Double parking. Double parking is unconditionally illegal already. Enforce it. You know, I don't understand the problem there. If there's a double park, the sheriff should go out immediately and ticket it. And then go back an hour later and ticket it, and just keep ticketing it until it's not fair anymore. It's an easily solvable problem if you have the will to do it, except that he's too busy visiting brothels in Las Vegas. I've seen the photos that prove it. Yeah.
All right.
As far as people who live there not having a place to park, there's only somewhere around 12 or 15 legal houses in Princeton. And one way or another, I think that arrangements can be made for them if they don't have sufficient on-site parking. I already mentioned visitor, temporary permits. And if necessary, issue some small fixed number of permits per property, including the businesses. Say, every property can get permits to park 2 vehicles on the street. And that's it. No unrestricted overnight parking. Another thing that you could consider would be a 12-hour parking limit. That takes care of your fishermen where you don't know, what time they're leaving.
They're often out for more than a day.
Yeah. I'm sure that somebody can come up with a workable solution to that. But, the fact that some of these issues are difficult doesn't mean that it should be ignored. So I totally support everything that Lisa is saying.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
I love your show, I don't have to pay the cable anymore. I get one month.
Thank you, Bill. We're glad we entertained.
Really. I hope you're coming back for another season. So, actually, Leonard just actually made my point for me here. When you were talking about Chris and the parking, I understand Chris's point, I understand Lisa's point, so I can't really get along with it. But what really bothers me is, once you do it in Princeton, it's going to creep out. It's going to go into Nevada, it's going to go into Moss Beach, it's going to go into Montero, and frankly, I don't think a lot of people want that. I'm not particularly happy when people have their RV across the street from my front window, that's 6 to 9 months out of the year, but, that's a neighborhood issue, and, you go out there and set fire to it. Because the sheriff won't do anything, so you might as well. But the real problem here is that we're trying to over-regulate stuff, and the Princeton plan was supposed to address this. And, it's long in the tooth and coming to that, but whatever you implement is going to end up. If I lived in Princeton and you start to put on my neighborhood certain restrictions, I would say, wait a second, this is unfair treatment under the law. If it's good for Princeton, it's good for Moss Beach, it's good for Montero. So if you're going to over-engineer the problem, and that's what Leonard is here for, then, think about how are you going to adapt this to the whole Midcoast. And that's probably a bigger ocean than you want to boil. So, that's my 2 cents. It has to be good for everybody out here. If the county's going to implement this in the unincorporated area, you got to do it for the unincorporated area, not just one little neighborhood in the unincorporated area. And then while you're at it, actually, you can go to Etheldor and Vermont Street, where Dan's Bar used to be. And the history of that was all the people that went to drink at Dan's didn't want to have the parking park, so they all parked nose in. Now, if you ever come up, I think it's Vermont, maybe it's Virginia, all those V streets, but actually it is Virginia. If you're heading uphill on Virginia and you want to go out onto Etheldor, you have to be into the middle of the intersection to see around the trucks and the big SUVs that are parked nosed in there to see if there's something coming south. Right now, you have problem the other way because there's some county park equipment that's parked there while they're renovating the park. So you used to be able to at least look down south. But, that's a hazardous intersection. I don't know anybody's been run over, but it's certainly not good that you have to go that far out to see. And some people go up and down that street way more than the 25 that was posted at. So start to go through all these neighborhoods, and with me, it's like, get rid of the dangerous ones first, and, you know, I mean, we all know who the one or two companies are in Princeton that do abuse it. You know, that's a whole other issue.
All right, thank you, Bill. Marcia, you're up next.
Well, hi, I'm Marcia, and I was just going to comment on Plan Princeton is going to be talking about all these parking issues, isn't it? I mean,
The parking issues have been discussed as part of the Plan Princeton process. It's not a major part of Plan Princeton.
so if we do.
Plan Princeton is more general policies, it's gonna be an LCP amendment, but putting in parking regulations would come after that, and I think the complaint, as I understand it, these complaints have come from some businesses in Princeton who are being hampered by the current situation. They want some relief. They probably don't want to wait that long.
Okay, and then also, when we're talking about parking, I was going, I don't know, Stanford Avenue, I think it is, that one guy who lives in the warehouse, man, he's making his whole place a garden. You know, so we're talking about regulations, I shouldn't be there either. I mean, he's putting in,
Yep.
he's putting in all, he's got that rose garden, and then he had all.
Where are you?
It's right by that, right by by Roscoe Peter. And there's, as you go down Stanford Avenue, there's those row of warehouses. And one guy kind of started out with a little rose garden, then he has now he has a trellis. I think last weekend I saw he has like 5 or 6 new bushes that he was going to be planting.
In the public right of way?
No. But if we're talking about regulations and what should be right, I mean, he's living in a warehouse, and he's turning the whole front yard, warehouse parking lot into a garden.
Yeah,
So-
there are a number of people living in Princeton in
Right.
places that are not zoned or use
No, I
permitted
know,
for
he's
it.
making it like totally obvious.
But that's a somewhat different
It is
subject.
the charm of the area.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a comment or ask a question?
I forgot one of the.
Go for it.
I'm not prepared to do this on the spot, but somebody needs to analyze the Coastal Act requirements to favor visitors, and if the visitors come here and they don't have a place to park because the street is littered with crap that shouldn't be there, this can probably be taken to the Coastal Commission. And you don't want to see what they'll do about it. If the City of Kathleen Bay put in some permit parking required at all times, I don't know how to characterize which neighborhood it is there, but that lasted not very long, and the city was ordered to take down the signs.
Yep, all issues to be considered. So, go ahead, Lisa.
So we had on West Point, near the beach, there was a sign, a private sign on the fence that reserved parking. And we got that taken down. The Coastal Commission got involved, in Sarah Rosendahl, and they said that was development because it limited beach parking. And they had to take the sign down. And the sign was on the fence next to a certain business, which had an ample off-street parking lot. And as soon as the sign went down, then they parked their vehicle there so that nobody else could park there. Where they had the whole off-street parking, but then they just really didn't want anybody else to park there on that street. It's too bad.
All right, so to sum up where we are, so I will invite Lieutenant Muncy to come in and talk to us.
Better
perhaps.
warn him.
I've just made friends with him yesterday, so I'm not going to come attack him the next time I talk to him. So I will invite him perhaps to the next meeting or the meeting after depending what his time availability is.
If I can make a recommendation, why don't we wait for the meeting after, and then we can use the next couple of weeks as an opportunity to maybe better log activities.
Right.
Better what, I'm sorry?
Log, document.
I love those documents, yes.
Yeah, it's good to have data before you act.
See if you can get
So-
every single car
Data,
stored along
love
there
data.
to move to a different place.
So you're gonna go out there and write it all, right, Lisa?
Oh, I need a picture of the street, you can tell whether it's different later, you know?
Oh, there we go, we can deputize parking officers.
Yeah, we could submit to you time-lapse photos. I think, the real answer is to enforce and give them, 1 or 2 tickets, 3 strikes, you're out, tow the vehicle. Once you start bringing tow trucks, the problem is solved.
Unless the tow truck companies are using that as storage.
Good point.
But anyway, so I was going to say, so next steps are, I think the feedback from the council as a whole was pretty strong, that we want to see data and a plan that has the actions and results considered before we go any further. But beyond that, clearly we do believe, or some of the council believes, we have businesses that are offending. One of the activities that we could do is ask the sheriff to talk to those businesses. And, it's not like he can threaten them, but he can let them know there's an issue arising and may or may not have any effect. And I will certainly propose that and see what he has to say. And the other thing I would suggest is if we have people that are specifically bothered by this, if they don't wish to remain anonymous, it would be very helpful to hear from people who are having problems. So we know exactly what we're talking about. I mean, we all know there's an issue in certain areas, there is no parking, but, is it to address some of these questions that were raised tonight, is it actually bothering anybody on those particular blocks? I don't know.
In Plan Princeton, there's been great discussion about not enough parking where it's needed, away from Harbor Village. And part of this issue is stuff stored in the street. Boat on a trailer, just sitting there week after week, or these other things.
Great.
No, I appreciate everyone's feedback. Thank you.
Great. Anything else on this issue before we move on? Bill?
You should reach out to the Princeton Homeowners Association and make sure that they're aware of it, and maybe they might want to come, because it is.
Good point, yeah.
I didn't even know there was a Princeton Homeowners Association. I know there's Clipper Ridge, I didn't know about the...
Princeton Citizen Advisory Council.
I understand that, but they're not the part of Princeton that we're talking about.
It's kind of defunct, the Princeton one.
Yeah, that's really old, isn't it?
I think there's still people there.
Yeah, but it
They think
doesn't-
there's one.
Some people say it does not represent them.
Okay. So if anybody has contacts with anything, if anybody has contacts of anything approaching anything like a homeowners organization in Princeton, then let me know and I'll try and get in touch with them.
There was the Princeton Citizen Advisory Committee, but I suspect it's defunct.
They are relatively defunct, and they're the ones that others say don't represent them.
Okay. Thank you, Nicholas, appreciate it. I know it's getting late. All right, on to council activity. Anybody have council activity they want to report? Chris?
Yes, on Monday, I attended the first public meeting for the Green Valley Trail. And I have to say that I understand that there was a Warriors game, but it was poorly attended. I would say there was 25 people there, 15 of whom were involved with the project in some way. We had a room of about this many people, and after introductions, there was me and a couple other couples that were not at some point called out as introductions. So extremely disappointing, the public turnout. Per Carol's comment about, I've seen many notices about this for the last week at least. There was nobody there.
They have an excellent webpage on the county parks exciting, all kinds of stuff.
I guess everybody was going to the webpage instead of to the actual presentation, so, I got right through. In fact, I left at 5:15 for the 6 o'clock meeting, and I was there by 5:30, because I was anticipating that, boom, right there. That's from El Granada. The project, they do have a project website, and that is taking comments on, I brought a couple of maps that they plastered. They've got a preliminary concept. It's not a design, it's not the plan they're going with, it's a preliminary concept. The website is available to take comments until May 25th. I'm not sure what happens after that point. They're expected to be in the planning phase for this project for the rest of the year. Back to the 25 people and the 15 who were involved in the project. Caltrans not represented. They were invited, but they did not send a representative, so that was disappointing. County's requesting $1.2 million for construction, about $200,000 for plans and permitting. County Parks does have ingress-egress easement for the property back there, but still needs to work things out with Caltrans and State Parks about their portions of the property. Question I ask is, so they've got, if you look at these maps here, they've got, it's pretty straightforward. If anybody's been there, there's an access road out to a former housing barrack out there. And that trail will pretty much follow that. And then it will cut back towards the highway. But when we get over near the highway, they've got 3 different options there, some of which are some pretty steep 10% grade switchbacks, things like this. So a question I asked is, what's the length of this proposed trail? They didn't have an answer. What's the elevation gain of this proposed trail? Because it does go back up. They didn't have an answer to that. Is there a visitor profile of who is expected to use this trail? Are we talking about families with strollers and babies, or are we talking about people that are going to be doing hardcore mountain biking? They don't have that. Is there a profile of the typical use of this trail? Again, like the typical user? No. So I ask those questions because I believe that many people are under the impression that this is a connector trail to the Devil's Slide Park. That was my impression. But
It is indeed. The Coastal Conservancy has dedicated money to it for exactly that reason.
so it will connect Gray Whale Trail to Devil's Slide Park, but based on the language of the consultants and the other people at the meeting, this is not to be considered a connector. This is a rustic trail that is going to have minimal improvements. You know, it's not going to be a fully engineered trail. It's going to be a minimally engineered trail, and it is going to have a non-direct route with some potential 10-degree slopes. And so I expressed to them my concern that there are going to be people going to Gray Whale Cove and parking there, expecting to park there and go to Devil's Slide Park, and when they start heading off up into the mountains with their kids or their grandparents or whatever, they're going to be a little disappointed in where am I going, what am I doing here, and then get to a 10% grade. And so that's when it was presented to me that this should not be considered a connector trail.
Okay, you have a different definition of connector trail than I. That's part of the California Coastal Trail. It is a connecting segment. So did you say that they actually have secured the easement?
Let's see. County Parks does have an ingress-egress for the private property, the Vexstein / something.
Andy Beckelstein, yeah.
Yes. However, still need to work out with Caltrans and State Parks on their property. So, yes and no.
Okay, so since the easement is public knowledge, I will say I hiked the trail this weekend, and it's actually quite hikeable as is. The only bad part is the part you're talking about, which is the part closest to Devil's Slide, coming down to Devil's Slide.
Yep. So that's the next meeting. Unfortunately, I mean, they didn't say anything about any more public meetings. The next meeting is August 6th at the San Mateo County Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Well, there will be apparently another presentation. But website taking comments till May 25th. I encourage everybody to go and take a look at this and provide your comments there. Again, as my comment was, I cannot wait for this trail to take my son for a hike and to go mountain biking on and to connect safely and securely and easily to Devil's Slide Park, but I was told to back off on the safely, or not the safe, excuse me, the easily part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily an easy connector.
It is a hiking trail.
It's a rustic country trail.
And it's not bikeable right now due to roots and branches.
Yeah, not right now, no. They will be, please go to the website, because they're going to be, they're going to be needing to put some boardwalk structures over some riparian areas and some other wetlands that they've identified. So there will be some hard construction there in addition to the trail surface.
Great.
Yeah, give us the URL for that, can you?
We can,
There's a link to it on the Midcoast Council website.
Yes.
There you go.
Your one-stop shop for everything, right there.
thank you, Lisa.
Sorry
There's
about
a
that.
post
I didn't have
down
the URL.
around 3 ones down, and there's everything you need to know
I
there.
saw that, yes.
It announced the meeting that he went to.
Yes, it did.
I just want you to know I have a shortcut to my desktop on my cell phone.
All right, yes, yes.
All right, any other council members want to report? Lisa?
Oh, I just wanted, I'm going to attend the San Mateo County Harbor District Beach Replenishment Committee meeting, May 19th, at 7 p.m. at the Yacht Club. This is a committee headed by Nicole David and Pietro Paravano, and they're going to have quite an assortment of agency people there, and the discussion will be about Surfers Beach as a possible location for a pilot beach replenishment project. So, you know, if you want to come and listen in or even throw in your 2 cents.
519, you said?
Yeah, it's the same day as Big Wave, and it's in the evening, 7 p.m. That's all. Yeah.
All right, anybody else have any meetings they want to report on? Well, I will mention then, as I said, I did meet with Lieutenant Muncie yesterday. This was in connection with people initially in Montera who contacted myself and Aaron Deinzer about their concerns about crime in Montera. There's been some similar concerns expressed in El Granada. Also, traffic problems, people not stopping at stop signs, speeding on fairly narrow streets, some near accidents and the like. So we're looking into helping people set up a neighborhood watch in Montera. There's also been some interest expressed from Mott's Beach residents, and I suspect some from El Granada will be coming in. Aaron did write a note on Next Door Neighborhood that was published to all the Midcoast neighborhoods. And I've gotten, I think, 10 emails from that already today. It was posted last night or early today. So anybody who is concerned about those, feel free to get in touch with me or Aaron, and we'll keep you in touch with what's going on.
Thanks
That's
for
it for
doing
me.
it.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
No, future agendas. Sorry.
Almost did.
Almost.
Sounded good.
Good
Okay,
try.
so when,
Motion to adjourn is always in order, it can't be debated.
yeah, I'm not debating it, I'm just not hearing it. Future agendas, May 27th, does not have anything on the agenda at the moment. June 10th has a potential presentation on the Half Moon Bay Library from Friends of the Library. Thank you, Chris, for that suggestion. And there was talk about a possible follow-up meeting on Connect the Coast Side, but I think at this point that's probably not going to be on June 10th. Also, I will not be here June 10th. Chris will be running that meeting.
I will
All right.
not be here June 10th as well.
Yeah, we'll still have a quorum. Erin will be here. Yeah. She has said she'll be here. So, let's see, did anybody have any other agenda items to add? No. All right. Can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.